Hello! Acceptance into citizenship, or as lawyers call it, naturalization, is the process by which basically everyone can become a citizen of Ukraine. When I say everyone, it doesn't mean that it is fast and effortless, but it is absolutely doable if you have such a goal. My name is Sergey Alexandrov, I'm the founder of Legal Ideas law firm, and you are watching the channel of real legal information from expert lawyers without blogging and populism. In our previous video, I explained the peculiarities of Ukrainian citizenship and named the cases in which a foreigner can become a Ukrainian citizen. For example, foreign children born in Ukraine can become Ukrainian citizens. A link to that episode is in the description under this video. However, there is one case that absolutely everyone can use, and it is almost guaranteed that you will obtain Ukrainian citizenship. To apply for Ukrainian citizenship through this option, a foreigner needs to complete 8 steps. To file a relevant application, to acknowledge and follow the laws of Ukraine, to undertake to renounce their current citizenship, or to declare that the applicant is a stateless person, which means they are not a citizen of any country, to have a legitimate source of income, to pass a test for knowledge of the Ukrainian constitution and the history of Ukraine, to pass the Ukrainian language comprehension test, to continuously live in Ukraine, and to obtain the immigration permit. You can read about all these 8 requirements everywhere on the internet and can hear about them from different bloggers on YouTube. But none of them explain the details, like how good your Ukrainian language skill has to be, how long you have to live in Ukraine, how to get the immigration permit, and so on. Since you are watching the channel of a law firm without blogging and populism, let's dwell on each of these requirements and explain all the important details that you should know. So the first item on the list is to file the application. It can be any application. The template of this application is approved by the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. It is a very simple template, so you won't have problems filling it out. I'm not going to attach a link to this template because they can introduce a new one at any time. And if you use an outstanding one, your application will be rejected. So if you need it, just contact Legal Ideas law firm and we will send you the current version of this application. The second item on the list is to acknowledge and follow the laws of Ukraine. It is as simple as it sounds. It is just a formal bureaucratic formality that is already included in the citizenship application. So by applying for citizenship, you comply with this requirement by default. The third item is the written undertaking to renounce the current citizenship or the declaration that the applicant is a stateless person, which means they are not a citizen of any country. This written undertaking or declaration is merely a written promise where you say that you will submit a document proving the termination of your citizenship within 2 years after becoming a Ukrainian citizen. The templates for these applications are approved by the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine and are very simple one-page documents. So you don't need to worry about what to write in them. Just fill out this very simple template and that's all. But even such a simple obligation is not required for many categories of applicants, which makes the process even simpler for them. If you are from a country that terminates its citizenship by default when its citizen obtains a foreign citizenship, foreigners who are of national interests of Ukraine or who have done outstanding deeds to Ukraine, refugees and asylum seekers, foreigners who serve or served in the Ukrainian army, the widows, spouses, and children of all these persons. There could also be some other exceptions envisaged in the agreements between Ukraine and the applicant's country. The next requirement is to have a legitimate source of income. The law defines a legitimate source of income as salary, profit from entrepreneurial activity or property, pension, scholarship, alimony, social benefits and assistance, own financial savings or financial assistance from family members, other individuals and legal entities. Take into account that there are some exceptions again. The next categories of foreigners don't have to prove any source of income. Refugees and asylum seekers. Foreigners who are of national interest to Ukraine or who have done outstanding deeds to Ukraine. Servicemen of the Ukrainian army. Here I must make a reservation. When I speak about military servicemen, there are many different nuances. For example, when a foreigner served or still serves, when they fought on the Ukrainian side but were not officially enlisted in any military unit, who retired during some specific health conditions, etc. To make it simpler, in this video, I will combine all such cases under the same term, military servicemen. But if you are somehow attached to military or paramilitary activities in Ukraine, most probably the above applies to you. However, if you belong to this category, just contact us or comment under this video and we will personally advise you on your particular case. Our next requirement is to pass a test on knowledge of the Ukrainian constitution and the history of Ukraine. This requirement doesn't apply to people with disabilities related to vision, hearing, or speech impairments or certain mental health conditions. There is the approved official list of health conditions that exempts a person from passing these tests. The test is organized according to the procedure approved by the Ukrainian government in a special decree. The link to this decree is in the description under this video, so you can read about all these peculiarities of this test. First of all, you can't just ask any school or university to test you. The test is given only by a special government institution called Scientific and Methodological Center of Higher and Professional Pre-Higher Education. This institution creates the test questions that everybody can assess to get prepared for the test. The whole database of the test questions consists of 160 questions about the Constitution of Ukraine and 190 questions about the history of Ukraine. The link to the website of this institution is also in the description of this video. You apply for the test online. Within 2 months, you will be notified about the date, time and place of holding the test. This test is conducted offline and in the Ukrainian language. And so it's our next citizenship requirement is Ukrainian language comprehension. As with the previous constitution and history test, the language test is not required from foreigners who have a disability related to vision, hearing or speech impairments or some certain mental health conditions. To pass the language test, you will need to prove at least a B1 level of language comprehension. The testing is organized by the National Commission of the Standards of the State Language. So even if you already have a B1 or a higher certificate, you still have to pass this particular test from this state institution. The language test is also taken only offline in the cities of Kyiv and Lviv. In the description under this video, I will leave a link to the official web page of the test. There you will find out full information about how to get registered for the test, how to get prepared for the test, etc. Now, please concentrate, because the next requirement is continuous living in Ukraine, and it has some tiny but crucial details in it. First of all, let's clarify what continuous living is. The law on citizenship clearly explains that it is when a foreigner who lives in Ukraine makes a single trip abroad for private matters for less than 90 days, and in total the trips abroad within a year don't exceed 180 days. However, it's okay and it doesn't breach your continuous living if you stay abroad longer due to a business trip, studying, vacation or medical treatment. By default, the law requires 5 years of such continuous living, but for some categories of people this 5-year requirement doesn't apply at all, or a shorter period is required. In particular, a 3-year period is required from military servicemen, refugees, asylum seekers or stateless persons. A good number of people fall into a category that is exempt from this requirement entirely. So, foreigners don't need to live in Ukraine if they have been married to a Ukrainian for over 2 years, if they are unfortunately widows of Ukrainians, provided that their marriage lasted for 2 years, if they are of national interest to Ukraine, or if they have done outstanding deeds to Ukraine, if they are spouses of Ukrainians who have the immigration permit. In real life, it applies when a foreigner and their Ukrainian spouse have a baby, which is a legal ground for obtaining an immigration permit immediately. Okay, now we have got to the last requirement needed for acceptance to citizenship. It is obtaining the immigration permit. It is the most important requirement, and in fact, it has always been the one that precluded people from getting Ukrainian citizenship. It was almost impossible to get it. But everything changed in 2023 when new legislation was passed allowing foreigners to obtain the immigration permit after continuous living in Ukraine for 5 years. That's why I say that everyone can now obtain Ukrainian citizenship, because everyone now can obtain this immigration permit. The process of obtaining an immigration permit has its own rules and requirements. A package of documents you need to collect and submit, etc. So, I'm not going to cover this topic in this video. Instead, we will make a separate video dedicated to the immigration permit, where I will explain in full detail what you need to do to get it. However, in this video, I must also add that for the purpose of applying for Ukrainian citizenship, the immigration permit isn't needed for foreigners who are of national interest to Ukraine or who have done outstanding deeds to Ukraine, those who served in the Ukrainian army, refugees, asylum seekers and stateless persons, and for those who have obtained temporary or permanent residency but only based on some certain cases. For example, residence based on work or marriage is not included in this exception. That's all. Now you know every tiny detail on the Ukrainian citizenship process. The only thing left is to find out how to get the immigration permit. But we are going to cover this topic in our next video, so stay tuned. My name is Sergey Alexandrov. I'm the founder of Legal Ideas Law Firm, and you're watching our immigration law podcast with real legal analytics, without blogging and populism. If you have any questions about this topic, feel free to comment under this video or contact Legal Ideas Law Firm by any means convenient for you.